Hi everyone, and welcome to today's GGNA webinar on implementing data, creativity, practicality, and culture change, a case study from the Lyric Opera of Chicago. I'm Lana Buseman from the marketing team here at GGNA, and we're very excited for you to join us. Before we begin today, I just want to go over some technical details. We ask that if you can, please log into WebEx before dialing in. Once you launch the webinar, a window will appear on your screen similar to what you see on slide 1. If you've already called in, please hang up and follow the instructions in the window to dial in. Then we will be able to associate your phone with your name. You may ask some yes or no questions during the session. Please take a look at the slide on the screen to see where you can answer yes or no. Also notice the raise your hand feature. During the session, your phone will be muted. If you want to ask Kat and Katie a question directly, please raise your hand, and that will signal to me that you want to ask them a question. We also encourage you to use the chat panel shown on slide 3 in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen for any questions or comments during the session. Please notice that we ask you to direct your question to all panelists so the presenters and I can see it and field it. At the end of today's session, we are also going to ask everyone to take a 1-minute survey to let us know what you thought about the webinar, so please stick around for that. If at any point during the webinar you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please send me an email at lbuseman@grensglier.com. or call our meeting provider WebEx directly at 866-229-3239. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Kat.
Thank you, Lana. Hi, everybody. We are so delighted to have you joining us today for a great case study with the Lyric Opera of Chicago. We invited Katie to do this presentation because we have been watching them closely as they've been implementing a huge shift in the way that they approach development as a result of data, and it's been just a pleasure to work with them and see what they've done there. I am joined today by Katie Hall, who's the Assistant Director of Development, Donor Relations and Research. And Katie, to start us off, if you would give us a sense of your background and familiarity with data and what brought you to this project, as well as when the project was begun at the Lyric, what the sense of horizon was there, the situation, everything like that, so that we have a little bit of sense of both the organization and you and why data was interesting.
Sure. Thanks, Kat. First of all, thank you so much for having me today. This is really thrilling to be here to talk about what's going on at the Lyric. I've been at the Lyric for about 2.5 years, and I've loved data much longer than that. I always like the sort of scientific approach to an issue, so it was really fantastic to start at the Lyric, and they had just started using GGNA, so that was a huge new impetus for how we looked at things because that was layered on so much of our other data that we were working on. So I stepped into this ideal situation and sort of grasped the project and ran with it, which was a fantastic opportunity. So it was a great marriage between my personal passion in approaching fundraising and also where Lyric was in terms of looking at its development in the development department, actually. So that actually leads to some of our, both of our challenges and advantages as we looked at implementing data. So throughout this, a couple themes throughout this is that we do use our GGNA data on a regular basis, so I will be integrating that a lot into my presentation. But you actually…
Sorry, and when you say the GGNA data, I think y'all did both wealth screening and also some of the modeling on the record.
Both,
so
absolutely.
There's capacity, affinity, gift types, all of that.
Right, but I'll try to speak of it in more general terms to create understanding. And today I'm going to try to actually revolve a lot of what I speak about around ideas, not necessarily numbers or anything like that, just to speak in more general terms. Because as the title gives it away, we take a very practical yet creative approach to how we're looking at data. So first, the challenges. I think it was really starting to look at data as a resource. Lyric, the development department, is blessed with an incredible institutional knowledge from staff who have been there for years and who are just fantastic, fantastic fundraisers. And, you know, that really can go hand in hand, and I think data only serves to strengthen the personal knowledge of what development folks have. Yeah. And so we were really looking at refining and developing the process to really dig a lot deeper in terms of our prospect pipeline. How were we really delving into our prospects, both from current donors, prospective donors, and since we're a performing arts organization, also current ticket buyers, subscribers, things like that, and to move them along a system. How are we integrating? How are we adapting what we already do, which is fantastic, to do it even better? And I think those were key questions that were the sort of first challenge to, what we call a cultural change, which is thinking about data on a day-to-day basis, which when you are in the day-to-day work of a nonprofit organization, it can be a lot of overwhelming things, and you're always busy, and you're doing every job possible. So there is a challenge, I think, to integrating a new concept into it.
But the goal in adding something like that is actually to make things easier.
Exactly, exactly. It's getting over that hump of integration, and then to make that system where you're like, oh, yeah, I got it. It's so easy. It's part of what we do. Which I think is where we are right now, which is fantastic, which started with a couple of our staff members who were early adopters, and I love nothing more than early adopters who, we really kind of rolled this project out, and they were in my office the next day asking how they could use it and how they could help, which made it so much easier in terms of, yes, let me help you look at how we pull lists for different solicitations, and let's use this new data and make it an even better system.
And were those staff who were really interested in the data application, like, all under 35?
No, not at all, actually. It was a great mix. So that was really, really fantastic in that way. Because I think we kind of assume sometimes that it'll be the young set that really wants to use this new data, but we had a whole range of ages, which I will say was very lucky to be able to have that in that terms. And, I think as well as it creating questions for us and creating new systems for us, it also reassured us. We did use our GGNA data to look at our very, very top of our pyramid, and we knew them all, and we had them. So we looked at those and we're like, we're done. We got that. We're looking at them. We're using them. We'll put them to the side and work on them more later. And
they're being stewarded. There will be gifts.
Exactly.
We actually do know the prime of our
Exactly.
database.
They're in our inner circle. They're part of our family. We felt great about that, which is, that should be part of it. It should tell you what you're doing well. You can set that aside and work on the areas where you need to work on more, which is fantastic. And that's where we needed the immediate guidance, which was how do we use this moving forward right away? And that was definitely an advantage for us because, data is only good if you use it. It's not, if it sits there and nobody actually implements really great practices and policies as a result of it, then you might as well not bother with it. And, we have a donor base of over 7,200 right now. So if you look at that as one big number, it's overwhelming. But if you start to use segmentation and data, then it gets a lot easier, which is a huge goal of what we wanted to do.
And certainly what you hope will happen with data is that staff and communications can focus on breaking that down so that it's not a 7,200 wall of people.
Absolutely. I think I would put a list of 7,200 people in front of staff and they would just walk away chuckling and I wouldn't blame them. So yeah, laugh or cry, one of the two. So this next slide is, all fundraisers, we love a good donor pyramid. So I decided to take that. It never goes out of style. So I took that classic concept and move it around a little bit. And basically, I work from the bottom up in terms of what we're doing with our data usage. And it really, really depends on what area of fundraising you're working with, on what you're actually going to use the data for. So it was just a clean way for me to look at it and a familiar way for me to look at it. So that's kind of the tool I'll use throughout today.
And did you think of it this way from the beginning, or is it how you've now looked at it retrospectively?
It's retrospectively. I think how I looked at it at the beginning was, it was that first barrier, but all right, what do I do with all of this goodness? Because that's what it is when you have data, is it's just so much goodness. And so this actually came later and actually helped sort of clean up how I look about it. And we don't use this tool in general, but it's right in front of me on most days, so I can really think about it that way. And so let's start with the bottom, if that works.
Absolutely.
So we'll start with, who are our big picture people? So that's our non-donor single ticket buyers, our annual fund donors. But if you're not in performing arts, it's that big group of people who are probably giving lower level gifts, who are fantastic, but who you really do need to know a lot more about because they're the people that might not give the next year because, they're giving $100 or something like that. And so when I talk about sweeping assessments, this is thinking, how can we use data big picture? We're not going to dig down deep into every single donor, but how can we use it to our advantage? One way we started doing that was with our renewal and acquisition mailings. On our monthly renewal letters, I started to look at every single donor who you're going out to at a certain level and saying, what What do we know about them? What are their GGNA scores? Can I push this a little bit with the confidence that I know what their capacity is?
Sure.
So just in that way, that monthly review, so I really was reminding myself on a monthly basis, this needs to be something I'm looking at a regular time.
And that was monthly, you were looking at all of the renewal letters going out and targeting those. Absolutely. And sometimes it did me no good. There wasn't anything I could learn, but sometimes there would be 10 to 15 letters where I'm like, you know what, I think we can ask them for a little bit more this time. Maybe it won't work the first time, but we'll get them used to asking for more based on what I know their capacity is. And we do the same thing with, donor and subscriber segmentation. If we're acquisition mailing, let's make it a really good one based on what we know about them. So a great example is a Friends First mailing. So at Lyric, one of our donor benefits at the $1,000 level is what we call our Friends First receptions. So at the first intermission of almost all of our operas, we have a reception. It's coffee, it's cookies, it's good times, you talk to people, you get to meet them. It's a donor group that we don't necessarily get to meet a lot since they're at a lower level for our organization. But they're extremely committed and passionate about Lyric. So we decided to look at anyone who wasn't giving the $1,000, who had been with us for a long time, that sort of key 500 to 999 donors who you might not actually get to see at all, and your only impact with them is their renewal letter and a thank you letter. And so we were looking at them, we looked at their capacity, we looked at how long they had been with us, how many years they had been at, say, the $500 level, and we did an extremely targeted mailing. And that wasn't just increase your gift, it was increase your gift because we have this extremely popular donor benefit that would be fantastic. Yes, and it doesn't take any effort. You're already at the opera. Just come join us. Get out of the, the crowd and the outside and have a cookie, have some coffee, tell us hi, tell us what you love, tell us what you hate, either way. And it was actually a quite successful mailing. We did get new people, and I think it really just helped us create a sort of community among those $1,000 folks as well, because they're really becoming part of a group, which was fantastic for us. And, we're also looking at people who are philanthropically inclined based on their GGNA scores. So, will they give us more? Do they think, those kinds of things. So that was a really great, sort of sweeping assessment that we did, which was fantastic. And we felt really good about it, and we've really started to implement that more in our acquisition mailings. And even when we're mailing to events, what is their capacity? What are their scores? What data do we know about them? Because it's not cheap to do a lot of mailings, and we want to use that money effectively as possible. So. And you were, was this the group you were also talking about doing surveys with?
So we did do a survey with actually all of our almost all of our donor levels. Not all of them, the highest, but our big annual donor levels. And what we found out, which was great messaging, was we needed to really show what people's impact was on the opera. We were huge. We put on huge shows. Any, I think, big organization is faced with this, but when you give us $500, how are we thanking you, and how are we communicating with you? So on the flip side of asking when we're thanking, how do we message that, and how do we make it more impactful? So that's actually something we're currently working on, which getting data back that tells you something that you may not want to hear, I don't dislike it, because then you're only improving your system.
And when you go to survey your donors, are you doing mail, phone, emails?
Email for everybody who has emails, because who doesn't love a good email thing that you just click and you're done, and then hard copies for the folks who don't. Managed in the development department. So it's always good to ask questions.
Yeah, and then you know.
Right, exactly. So our next group, I've kind of grouped together our major gifts and our mid-level donors. Depending on the organization, these could be two very different groups, but I like to think them as one big system together that we're working on. And again, here we are really looking further down. It's not that big picture thing that we're doing with our low-level donors, that we're really drilling down into specific groups. And often, I find with data, once you find the data and find the people, it never stops there. It's a multi-tiered process, which is how it should be, I think. So just to give you an example, we decided to pull a certain level of donors, and we literally passed around a list in a meeting and said, who would you know on site? If you were in the Opera House and you saw them, you would know exactly who they are. And we got to a little over like 60%. And we're like, all right, why do we not know these other people? So from that, we spurred another project where we used our, basically our annual giving and major giving capacity, their general capacity, and their PRISM segmentation. I love PRISM segmentation. And then we picked subscribers, non-subscribers, single ticket buyers, And we divided those all up into several lists with several criteria, data that we knew, which ended up to being about 6 or 7 lists ranging from 50 to 400 people. And we got a group of 4 of us together, and we literally went name by name through these folks. And what I think is key to data is to have a good reporting system, right? So we actually have a report that shows their past 3 years of giving, all their GG&A scores, and whether or not they're a plain giver, a donor, a single ticket buyer, whether they came to the past ring cycles, things like that. So you have a snapshot in front of you, because that really makes the conversation a lot easier. And sometimes I think it's easy to forget about the tools that you need when you're looking at all this data. And so we went
because it is a layering of different kinds of data.
Absolutely.
Of their most up-to-date behavior and their past giving and projections and all of that.
Right, because I think if you look at one part on its own, you're never going to make the best decisions you possibly could. And the result was amazing. We literally passed on to our poor researcher, who is amazing and fantastic, and she created 175 unique full research profiles out of this.
So all of these different names, you go through them week by week, and then you asked for profiles on those who you didn't know?
Yes. Okay. Yep. Or that were like, oh, that name sounds so familiar. They've been here for 20 years, but I don't really think anybody's talked to them really recently. So, yes, in that way, people that we needed to know more about. And it resulted in folks that were like, you know what? I don't really think there's a lot of capacity there. They
now
haven't
that
been
I have
here a
seen
while.
you, I do not like you.
Right. I mean, yeah, in less harsh manner. But yeah, again, triaging who you're talking to, because you only have so much time. But, it also resulted in over 100 people for us to divide up and start talking to them, which without data, I'm not sure how we would have ever found those people.
And they weren't exactly cold prospects in that respect.
They weren't fully cold. There was some relationship with us.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not like they had bought one ticket to an opera 10 years ago and we're going to go after them. It was a continuous sort of relationship with us. And now we've grown that into another project, which is a different kind of data, which is not looking at what they look like as a person, it's what they're doing with us as a part of the Lyric family. So if we're giving them a certain amount of benefits or they can attend a certain amount of events, we're looking at the people who are coming to every single thing they can and taking a closer look at them. Why are they coming to every single thing? How can we actually get to know them even better since they're here so much?
And how do you ascertain why they're coming?
Exactly, exactly. So, and I think data, of course, I've already said this, but data never ends with data. Hopefully, in my world, data ends up in wonderful conversations face-to-face with people, because really it's that personal touch point that makes it so important in the fundraising world. So my goal is to look at, let's say we have I'm just going to make up a level, a $3,000 donor who came to every single event they could, redeemed every single certificate they could, and because they're not at our level of personal, ticketing sort of service, which we do offer, why are we not talking to them? Are we sending them cards? Are we trying to meet them at every event? So then that goes on my list to either take on myself or disseminate to somebody else on staff and go, you need to meet this person.
Right.
They're obviously involved, and we're not even having to, push them. They're coming on their own. They're self-identifying.
I want to follow up on 2 things you said. One is that you had 100 great new prospects.
Sure.
Right? How many gift officers, then, were you spreading those 100 people over? Because that alone is a lot. All
exactly.
of a sudden there's 100 people who all look great-ish. What do we do with them?
Right, right. Absolutely. No, it's a great question. So it was between 4 and 6 people. Okay. So not too many, but enough that we made it a manageable number, because I feel like if I would have handed someone and been like, here's your 50 new best friends for this season, go out and meet them.
And what's the follow-up that you have internally around how those folks get handled?
Sure. So, as a performing arts organization, so many of us have Tessitura, which is our, system for donors and also for ticketing. But I think pretty much any system you work with has a moves management system. So I'm a very clinical, system-oriented kind of person. So for every single person we researched, we set the first step, like they were researched, they were assigned. Now we're going to go back at the end of the season and say, what was our progress with every single person on this list? Many of them we met. We took them to dinner. We greeted them at an event. We called them. Some we didn't get to. That's fine. It's a process and a system. But we actually track everything in our moves management system. Because I'm like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow and nobody knows what I'm doing, again, this data has done no good. So it's important to be really visible and transparent on your system as well.
And on the benefits side, we talked a little bit about those who highly utilize their benefits.
Sure.
Were you able to find out anything about the people who underutilize benefits?
Oh, great question, yes. So that is something that we look at. We're going to start to look at, and we're at sort of at the, we've done, I think, part of our team who works a lot with donor benefits, they've been great over the years to look at that. Sure. And that's fantastic that they're doing that. So really what I'm trying to do is enable them to create those next steps in partnership with everything else. Yeah. So if we have 25 people who are at a certain level, yet they're not using any of their benefits, then why are they giving at that level? So that, again, is a different challenge for us to figure out, which is, I think, a really fun challenge in terms of us as fundraisers, is to get those stories.
I want to pause quickly here for some questions.
Great.
And just give people a chance to write in. So if you have any questions, feel free to write them into all panelists, and we will take them, or raise your hand and we'll call on you. So let's just take 2 seconds here.
Sure. Great. So we have okay. Sure. So we have a question here about, if we're looking at personal information, where they live, what else they donate to. Do you identify who knows who? Absolutely. And I probably should have really sort of built out what we were talking about when we say that full profile. So we'll take our initial snapshot data, and then I'll give it to, again, our fantastic researcher, and she'll do things. What is their history with the Lyric? All of it. How long have they been there? What have they given to? Are there special events they've attended? Then we'll also look at where they work, where they live. We know here in Chicago, and I'm sure it applies to every city, there's certain areas of the city where there's more wealth than others, or they're in the suburbs versus the city in terms of using their benefits. And then we'll look at their personal philanthropy if we can find it. And this is in partnership with DonorScape that's provided by you all, as well as other research databases that we utilize. There can never be too much information in my world. But then we'll also look at comparative giving. And we have actually started to track that as we've seen it in, again, their tessitura records. So we're creating snapshots within our own records as well.
What do you mean by comparative giving?
So we will, collect different programs or different annual reports from nonprofits here in Chicago, comparative opera companies. There's actually a lot of trading among opera companies of annual reports, because why not? We're helping each other. And because we're really all in this together when it comes down to it.
It's all about the Aryas.
Exactly. And we'll look to see who else is giving to what organization, and how, do we know them? Are they coming here? And so when we look at those full profiles, it'll have basically all of their other giving, if they're on other boards, if our board member knows them, if they sit on boards together. So that is really digging down deep into who they are as a person.
And are you looking at the same things at a meta level in terms of your best donors are all in certain areas, ergo when there's list acquisition, you want a profile that looks like your best donors?
We do that in the way, and I'll give you actually a really great plan giving example. So preempting a little bit the rest of the pyramid, but we will look at certain zip codes where we know some of our plan givers come from, or that we know are primarily homeowners, because I think we worked on a project together actually when we were looking at length of home ownership in terms of donating real estate.
Right.
And so we'll look at those characteristics based on what we can assume about the geography, and we'll target acquisition mailings or informative mailing. But we want to use those, again, effectively. So we will be looking at geography and what is our big scope of our donors there. In the same way that if we hold an event at a certain person's an in-home event, we're going to target those people who live in the area, because, again, it's convenient for them to come to the event. So, which is, logic, but sometimes it doesn't occur to you all the time. So, yeah, so we will use it in that way. Absolutely. So we'll move up the pyramid, it looks like. And so these are our production special project sponsors. I think for any organization, these, again, are your best circle of support, your nearest and dearest, your lovely family. You see them, you love them. And
these are all people who are known by face.
Exactly. We probably know their extended family by face. So that was a big challenge for me when I got this project. Well, I was like, well, how do I apply data to this? Don't we know them? What can I contribute in this way? again, though, you can never have too much information.
What could anonymity in terms of data tell me that I don't already know
exactly,
by having a relationship?
By the many conversations we've had. So I think in those terms, I look at it in like two different ways. So we have those continuing people who have been with us for years. And again, there's always more to know. Are they alumni of a specific college? Have they started giving to a different organization that we didn't know about? Are they coming to a lot of specific events around a specific project, and are we recognizing that? Because I think in the same way that you know somebody really well, you don't want to get complacent about them either and assume that you know everything, because I think it keeps it fresh and interesting.
And again, that would be a combination of what you're already tracking and mining that through their tessitura behavior along with outside appended.
Exactly, exactly. That's a fantastic way to do it. Thank you very much, Interpret. The other way is that we've had these people who have been giving us, wonderful gifts for how long, but, any good nonprofit is always innovating and looking at different programming and different projects. And I know at Lyric, we started a new program called Lyric Unlimited within the past 2 years, which is looking at community engagement, diversifying our audience, and we have come up with several different projects targeting brand new audiences, which we know part of our current audience is also interested in. So how do we actually use data in terms of attendance and where else they might be giving to apply it to our own unique situation? So, anytime you have a big special project or let's say a tour or a festival, that's new funding, but it's not going to be new to your organization. It's increased, but you're already going to know those people. So how do you make that best guess at who would be your great new funders for a new project? So it's moving those people around in the most effective way as possible. So,
have there been any, and the answer may be no.
Sure.
But when you're looking at doing new projects and the unlimited, have there been any surprises by looking in the data of who was actually interested in something?
Yes, there has actually. And, so around some of our new projects, we had a mariachi opera that came, and then we had we partnered. Exactly. It was amazing performance. I mean, just one of those things that you're like, and this is why I'm in the arts. And we also partnered with Second City. And some of our current partnerships were like, that is the project I want. And we're like, great. Add that to the list of things that you want to be a part of.
Wagner and improv. Take it away.
You wouldn't think, but it went together really well. So in that way, it's always keeping yourself on your own toes. And, to make I'm going to put sports and arts together and make a great tennis analogy. When you play tennis, you always want to stay on your toes. You never want to stop moving. And I think in a lot of ways, it's just like that for fundraising, and that you always want to be looking out for what people are doing, what they're up to, if they're getting honored at something, or things like that. Who else is there? Those kinds of questions. I think the more questions you ask yourself on a daily basis, the better. All right, plan giving. I love plan giving. It is such a fun place to apply data. And we have been, and I will tell you, our director of plan giving was one of our early adopters. It was absolutely fantastic, and it is such a great area to do constant experimentation. What are the different combinations of data you can use to really make it a fantastic group? We have a level actually called our Bel Canto benefactors, and that's where if you give a certain annual fund gift and a certain plan gift, you actually get added benefits. So it's great to look at annual fund data as well as plan giving data, as well as, how long have they been with us, things like that, and integrate that all together and do a targeted mailing that way. So you're really speaking to your key audience. Again, geographically, who are we looking at? This year we did a Florida trip, and a lot of people do those sort of like snowbird trips, especially in Chicago. I don't blame you for leaving, especially this past winter. Get out there, go to Florida, we'll probably follow you. But again, we were looking at, and actually you all helped us with that, is who lives in that area that we have, had in our family for a long time that we should talk to more. And
by being able to look at real estate records, we could see multiple properties in different areas and figure out who might be in Juniper.
Exactly, and that has been a huge learning curve for me, actually, is using real estate and where people live as a really effective tool. I think that was something I didn't have in my toolbox before I came to Lyric, and the more I've worked with that, I've seen the value of it. And it was an extremely successful trip. I mean, people were inviting their friends that were also people in Lyric that we didn't really talk to that much. And
was the trip set up, the plan giving director went down, and then there were a couple in-home events at different places in Florida?
It was a combination. They had one big party, and then they also did like a lot of like smaller visits. But then we would say, we'd love to come meet you, and they're like, great, I have these 4 friends who would love to join us. So it created a lot of,
please.
yes, I love it when data leads to parties. So that was a really, key project that we worked on. And now, again, we're starting to look at who our current plan givers are and what do those characteristics look like.
Huh.
Are they sitting in the balcony? Are they giving us $200? It's really interesting to put a matrix together of who our plan givers are, and we're actually going to use that data. So a different kind of data, again, than the actual people, but what are they looking like as a group? And then to me that goes, well, if we just got 10 new plan gifts from $200 donors who are lab subscribers, that to me just screams that's who we should be looking at in terms of reconnecting with them and letting them know what's going on at Lyric, even if they're not with us right now. So that is a great way to sort of, once you get that data to identify your plan givers, fingers crossed they become plan givers, now how can we use that new data to find more?
And so when you say doing this analysis on your plan givers, is it those who have included a gift for Lyric in their plan, or is it those who were just coded as promising for plan giving?
So we started with a group that's just our plan givers.
Known.
They said, yes, we love you, we heart you, we're gonna leave you a gift. And I think that's a great group to start with because we have a really robust plan giving program actually. And just starting there should help us give us a template. And this is something, what I love is this is something you can do with Excel and a calculator. And you don't really need big tools to do it or a huge department.
Right.
I just sat down and started going through people's records, and again, using that key report that gives you that snapshot, and started putting people in slots and what they look like and what their characteristics were. And a picture slowly started to emerge of these are the groups we should really be going after.
And there were a handful of different sort of plan giving profiles.
Exactly. And there were a lot of even numbers where you're like, oh, 1 or 2, and then you're like, oh, an 18. So we should probably pay attention to what this characteristic is. So.
And without giving away any trade secrets, what were some of those key characteristics that you included in your report? It was geography, it was lapse giving, it was where they sat in the house. What were some of the different things you were trying to parse?
Whether or not they were current subscribers, where they sat in the house, even if they weren't current subscribers, their donor level, because that was really interesting to see at what level they had been giving to us. And I think pretty much what you named. We kept it fairly simple because you can delve down deeper the more you want, but why not get that big picture at first?
Right. And especially if you're just dealing with Excel columns, you could go off to the right indefinitely.
Exactly.
And just make yourself crazy.
Right. And then you get involved weird color coding, and it never really works out. So you stick to the simple to start with. So.
All right. Let's take 2 seconds here to see if there are any questions on what we've gone over so far, maybe specifically plan giving, maybe not. Great. And let's move then to...
We reached the top of the pyramid.
The top of the pyramid.
Absolutely.
Oh, we just got
did we get a question?
We had a question come in about plan giving and whether other organizations who are participating in the webinar place their plan giving approach in the same order as being high priority. This particular organization says that they look at giving from all levels of donors. I welcome people to raise their hand whether, this is probably a great raise the hand thing. So if you would like to participate in the question, raise your hand if you have a specific priority on plan giving relative to other kinds of giving. I think that's probably the best way to ask that question. And Lana will keep track of the number that raised their hand. Just a couple, just a few. And it may be that plan giving is important across the board, but I think particularly for an opera, there's a certain demographic constituency.
Sure, and I
think
any organization that has a repetitive audience that builds loyalty, I feel like plan giving is really important. I think, for us, plan giving is so important, and I say this maybe just from my own personal point of view, is that we have looked at a world where opera companies have really had a lot of challenges lately, and personally for us, we are committed long-term to programming, and opera is planned 5, 6, 10 years in the future. So when we look at that, depending on future funding, it's really reassuring for us to have planned gifts because that ensures our success moving into the future. And I think a lot of performing arts organizations, I think really any nonprofit who's looking for future success and future security, plan giving is really important.
And your ability to do strategic planning as an organization is dependent upon knowing that there are gifts coming in a reliable manner.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not like we spend every day talking about plan giving, but it's also a really great area of fundraising, I think, to integrate into your conversations on a regular basis.
And tends to be underemphasized.
It does.
In a lot of organizations.
It does. It does. It's absolutely true. So, and again, it's just something, fun to focus on.
And it may have been precipitated within Lyric by the staff person overseeing plan giving wanting to use data.
Absolutely.
So had you had a staff person who was in charge of membership who went gaga over the data, that could have influenced it. And here you're working with the people you have, the situation you have in order to pilot things that then prioritizes.
Absolutely. And the goal is to integrate data across department, which we have done.
Absolutely.
But I just think it's a really great area to look at. It gives you some flexibility, and because you are working with any and all type of donor, really. I mean, it's at the top of the pyramid, but really it could just be over the entire pyramid because the characteristics can range so far in plan giving. So.
And yet there are going to be some really useful consistencies in terms of stable residents.
Yep.
As opposed to members at different levels could be moving, there could be a lot happening. Whereas plan giving, people are often in place for at least a little while.
Which is not your $50 member who may or may not ever renew. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and plan giving, I think, leads us easily to the top of the pyramid, the campaign, which I'm not going to delve down into too deeply, except for the fact that, again, this is a huge question for me, is how do I use data in a campaign? Because, again, you're really looking at people that you know, that you can ask for a larger gift. But I think the big theme for me in this area was creating confidence. So if you are going to make a big ask or to go to someone who's been with you for a long time but may not be in your immediate family, is that how much do you know about them? What are they doing? Where else are they giving? All that comparative data, as well as really diving deep down into the data that you have on them in terms of their relationship with your organization. And so, when our researcher does further campaign profiles, when I'm really going down into them, we're trying to suss out every single detail we possibly can, down to whose table did they sit at an event before they got their own table? Who do they know? Who brought them in?
What
who is their past solicitor? So not making any assumptions based on what they're currently doing, but really getting that full robust picture, because you don't want to go into a campaign ask and not feel prepared. So that's the big theme, I think, for me in that. And that the more you dig, sometimes one leads to another, and you didn't know this relationship existed, and that's that finding the diamond in the rough, where you're like, oh my gosh, they were with us for years, they knew this person, but they haven't been here for a while, but this is a perfect candidate that we just didn't have on our immediate radar. So.
And can lead to other perfect candidates based on that.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yep. So, it's been a really interesting experience. But I think, I would say data in general has just really led us to, and like you said, it gets easier. You have that initial, and we're always trying to improve systems and improve processes, but then eventually you're like, nope, I have these prospects, we have this system. Oh, I know exactly what to tell you to look for if you're looking for this certain type of person. So it really gets to be a huge advantage that way.
And hopefully in the end also it has economic benefits within the department of not sending mailings to everyone, sending really targeted mailings to the people most likely
It's that
to
two sides of the coin. You're trying to save money and you're trying to bring in money, because, development people, we are all about the money. So you can look at it both ways, and I think both ways are extremely effective. So, yep.
Well, Katie, I so appreciate you being here
Thank
today.
You.
This has been just wonderful and so interesting to see how things have been impacted at the Lyric at all different giving levels and gift types. We're going to stay on the line to allow people to write in questions for Katie for the next few minutes, but we also want to respect people's time, knowing that it's a busy week. So before you jump off, please do take the survey so that we can have a sense for data amongst our participants to do a little bit of metadata here. Any questions that we aren't able to get to immediately, we will absolutely get to in writing as follow-up to this. So, Katie, this is great, and we are in awe of all you've done, and we can't wait to see what more the Lyric does in the next campaign and special programs and marrying mariachi bands to party homes in Jupiter, Florida.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be a win all around. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.